Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Tuesday afternoon, November 24th. It's a cold day here in the Mid-Atlantic region with temperatures generally in the 40s and below normal for this time of the year. And it's starting to look more and more like the first part of the month of December will be a colder than normal weather pattern across much of the central and eastern U.S., perhaps a stormy pattern as well. We'll kind of focus in on those prospects over the next few minutes. First, we'll take a look at teleconnection indices that again suggest a colder and stormier weather pattern may be setting up for at least the first couple of weeks in the month of December in the central and eastern U.S. Also take a look at the correlation between a highly active tropical season in the Atlantic Basin during the months of October and November and a cold December in the central and eastern U.S. And then we'll end up by looking at the very latest operational run of the GFS at 12Z for the next couple of weeks because again, the signs are pointing more and more to a colder and stormier weather pattern, quite an interesting weather pattern beginning especially early next week as we transition from the month of November to the month of December. Let's start off by looking at three different teleconnection indices that kind of tell the same story here, that we may be headed to a colder and stormier weather pattern for the central and eastern U.S. First, we have the PNA, that's the Pacific North American Teleconnection Index, and then we'll take a look at the North Atlantic Oscillation, the NAO, and the AO, the Arctic Oscillation. Those last two are kind of closely related cousins, if you will, in terms of teleconnection. And that's what we mean by teleconnection is what goes on in one part of the world can have an impact on another part of the world. And first, looking at the North Pacific Ocean, whenever this teleconnection index this time of the year goes into positive territory, as it's forecasted to do here over the next couple of weeks, that tends to favor cold air outbreaks making it into the central and eastern U.S. At the same time, we have the North Atlantic Oscillation and the AO, the Arctic Oscillation, trending towards negative territory over the next couple of weeks, shown here in red. And that also favors colder air outbreaks from making it from Canada into the central and eastern U.S. So really the three of these together say the same sort of thing here, that we may be headed for a colder and stormier weather pattern, at least for the first couple of weeks in December across the central and eastern U.S. Again, when the PNA goes positive and the NAO and AO go negative, tends to favor cold air outbreaks from making it all the way from Canada into the eastern half of the nation. Well, in addition to the teleconnection indices that we just looked at, there is a connection explored by Joe Bastardi, for example, a fellow meteorologist at Weather Bell Analytics, that connects high tropical activity in the months of October and November to a cold month of December. He put together this composite temperature anomaly map for 5 seasons, 5 separate years where we had a lot of tropical activity in the Atlantic Basin during October and November, as we did this year. And what we're looking at is the composite map of those 5 seasons put together for temperature anomalies for the month of December. And this really sends a clear signal that the eastern half of the nation in those highly active tropical seasons late in the tropical year, November and October, usually correlated with a cold month of December. So again, this is kind of corroborating evidence, if you will, with the teleconnection indices that indeed we may have a colder and probably a stormier pattern as well as we transition from November to December, and that happens early next week. Tuesday of next week, 1 week from today, is the first day of the month of December. And again, credit this to Joe Bastardi, who's kind of looked into this and put together these 5 seasons. You'll notice one of the seasons here is 2005. That was that record-breaking year in the Atlantic Basin in terms of tropical activity. And this season we actually ended up with 2 more named storms, 30 in total for this season, as compared with 28 for the year 2005. Let's now take a look at the operational run of the GFS from earlier today. This is Tuesday morning 12Z run. First, we're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies across North America, and you see right now we're starting off with ridging here in the eastern U.S. and a pretty deep couple of troughs across the eastern part of Canada all the way into Greenland. We'll move quickly here over the next several days and watch what kind of a pattern develops. This is kind of a key to what may very well turn out to be a very interesting weather pattern come next week and perhaps into the following week as well. Here we are now going into the upcoming weekend now. This is the forecast map for Sunday, November 29th. This is past Thanksgiving Day all the way into the upcoming weekend, and notice this ridge starting to pop here across the western part of Canada. Now, the high pressure ridging higher heights than normal shown on these particular maps in orange and red. Deep upper level troughs are shown with a dark blue here. Watch what happens as we go into next week again to the beginning of the month of December. Look at this pattern here that's starting to form over the top of the U.S. and here we are all the way out to, let's say, the middle of next week. This is a week from tomorrow here, and whenever you have this kind of a pattern here with high pressure ridging really extending all the way in this region here across Canada, that is definitely an interesting pattern for this time of the year, because in this particular case you have deep upper level trough formed over the Great Lakes region. And notice also a couple other waves here. One wave over the western U.S., one trough over the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean. So potentially stormy weather pattern, and this high pressure ridging over the top does a couple of things. It kind of forces cold air into the U.S., and once it arrives, it will be slow to retreat because of this blocking pattern across Canada. Again, the purple here represents above normal heights. These are height anomalies off the charts here, literally off the charts here in purple here in terms of the height anomaly over the eastern part of Canada and the southern part of Greenland. Kind of a high latitude blocking situation, which again is signaled by NAO and AO dropping into negative territory here. Let's go out a little bit farther in time and notice still this kind of blocking pattern over the top in Canada with several different troughs of low pressure across the U.S. and even the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean all the way into the end of next week. How does this correlate to temperatures? Let's take a look at that next. Well, let's now take a look at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies going forward all the way into next week, and we have some milder than normal air across the eastern half of the nation as we get into Thanksgiving Day. Perhaps 60 degrees, maybe a little higher than that for highs on Thursday afternoon in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Very well could be some rain to go along with those mild conditions, especially in the morning on Thursday. But let's move quickly forward into the weekend and then the early part of next week. Here we are on Sunday, and notice here cold air mass starting to plunge into the south central states across the center part of the nation. This is the forecast for next Monday, the last day of November, and here we have, at the same time the high pressure ridging pops over Canada, you have warmer than normal temperatures across the Canadian provinces. But notice this blob of colder than normal air here by the 1st of December. This is a week from today, stuck here in the eastern U.S. and extending from the central U.S. into the eastern U.S. And it tends to stick around here. We'll go even later into next week. This is now all the way to Thursday of next week. Still have some colder than normal air. With all that energy aloft, it's quite an interesting weather pattern setting up for the central and eastern U.S. as we transition into the early part of December. Notice across Canada, warmer than normal conditions. Keep in mind, there's quite an extensive snowpack right now, really from coast to coast across Canada, from the western part of Canada all the way to the eastern part of Canada. That may limit to the extent of the warm-up across Canada, despite the fact that aloft you may have these warmer than normal conditions. It may be a little tougher to get that where we live at the ground level here, but again, a large area of colder than normal conditions here in the central and eastern U.S. As we progress through the first week of the month of December. Well, let's now wrap up with the surface forecast maps, not only for Thanksgiving Day, but going into next week as well. High pressure to the north, controlling our weather in the mid-Atlantic, the northeast today with colder than normal conditions. And here we have the next system here that will cause some rainfall in the eastern states as we begin the day on Thursday. This is actually the late Wednesday night. Showers arrive in the I-95 corridor region, and then by the time we get to Thanksgiving Day morning here, Thursday morning, a pretty widespread area of rainfall extending from D.C. all the way up to Boston as we begin the day on Thursday. Now, the bulk of that precipitation in the form of rain may end by noon or 1 o'clock or so in places like D.C. and Philadelphia, maybe a little bit later in New York City and Boston, but by the time we get to Thursday night, should be precipitation free, and then Friday and Saturday look quite nice indeed, and then Sunday probably hanging on. This is the forecast map for Sunday afternoon. Now, at this time, we have a lot of moisture starting to form over the south central U.S. near the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico, and here is that cold air mass starting to show up across the upper part of the Midwest. I believe there's a decent chance of a significant rain event as we transition into this colder and stormier weather pattern. We're talking about the next Monday, Tuesday time period. Happens to coincide with the transition from November, which ends on Monday, to December, which begins on Tuesday. Again, a significant rain event at the front end of this colder and stormier weather pattern. Here's a forecast map for next Monday afternoon. A strong low pressure system, cold enough for snow in the upper part of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, but a heavy rain event as we transition into December, as we transition into this colder and stormier weather pattern. And it may even turn cold enough in the interior sections of the Mid-Atlantic region by Tuesday of next week. This is a Tuesday morning forecast map for some snow, a changeover to snow possibility. Again, this blocking pattern over the top will prevent cold air masses from retreating too quickly and will prevent low pressure areas from escaping up to Canada too quickly. Let's go back in time here. Watch what happens here. It runs into that block from Monday afternoon and kind of retrogrades back to the eastern Great Lakes while it deepens by next Tuesday. So again, very interesting weather pattern, kind of sticks around here, and a reinforcing cold air shot by the middle part of next week, working its way towards the central and eastern states. And again, that could be kind of a persistent type of pattern, colder and stormier in the central and eastern U.S. for maybe the first couple of weeks of December, maybe even beyond that. We have some supporting evidence for a colder and stormier pattern in the central and eastern U.S. With respect to the teleconnection indices and with respect to some historical observations whenever you have a lot of tropical activity in the month of November and October. Correlates pretty well with a cold month of December. So again, interesting prospects for the next couple of weeks. That's it for now for PerspectiveWeather.com. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.